children have a right to life and they have a right to their mother and father. If saying that makes me homophobic, then it sounds like your worldview is fundamentally opposed to the natural realities of, biology, procreation, and the nature of the human child. IVF destroys more embryonic life every year than abortion. There's no adult group that is not victimizing children in some way.
Katy Faust is founder and president of Them Before Us, a global movement defending children's rights to their mother and father. She publishes, speaks and testifies widely on why marriage and family are matters of justice for children, and she joins me today. Thank you so much, Katy, for joining me today. Can you share with our viewers here what got you into the work that you're doing today, and how has your perspective changed along the way?
Well, I got into this mainly because of the gay marriage debate that really took hold in the United States around 2012. It was in my state. My state was considering a vote on it then, and then just a couple of years later, the Supreme Court took up the case. And the reason I felt like I needed to say something was because the conversation was obsessively focused on adults, what adults wanted, their identity, their backstory, their longing, their losses. And the kids were always left out of the conversation. In gay marriage, the focus was on what the adults wanted. And if they got what they wanted, it means children lost their mother or father. And so what we heard from supporters of gay marriage was that kids love having two moms or two dads. But I had worked with kids at that point for 2 decades in a variety of capacities. And I had never met a kid who lost their mother or father who loved it. And that's really what you're talking about with a same-sex headed household. You're not talking about a kid with two dads. You're talking about a kid who has lost their mother. You're not talking about a boy with two moms. You're talking about a boy who has lost their father. And that leaves a lifelong wound. So I just started writing about this anonymously at first because I felt like somebody needed to represent the kids in the marriage debate. But then the more I learned and the more I was challenged, in the comment section of the posts that I was sharing, the more I realized that it wasn't just marriage where kids were being sidelined. It was every conversation about marriage and family and parenthood, including divorce and reproductive technologies and surrogacy and IVF, in polygamy, in who goes on a birth certificate, anything that connected to marriage, family, and parenthood was being elevated as a vehicle of adult fulfillment, and children's rights and needs were being put on the back burner. So I grew a lot over the course of my anonymous blog, and then moved into public advocacy under my own name, and then finally started Them Before Us in 2018 because I felt like kids really needed formal representation, both in the courts and in the culture.
Fantastic. Now, some people could say, well, Katy, is that not homophobic, what you're doing? What would you say to that person?
Oh, lots of people say it. Lots of people say it. But I think the question is, what I advocate for is children have a right to life and they have a right to their mother and father. If saying that makes me homophobic, then it sounds like your worldview is fundamentally opposed to the natural realities of, biology, procreation, and the nature of the human child. I'm just stating who children are and what they need. And the truth is, I'll trigger you on a lot of stuff too. I mean, if you want to accuse me of homophobia, just wait until we start talking about IVF. And then you'll probably say, I hate people that struggle with infertility. This world of putting children first, their right to life and their right to their mother and father, it actually does not allow any exemptions. It demands that everybody, single, married, gay, straight, fertile, and infertile, conform to the fundamental rights of children. It requires that all adults sacrifice, because the only alternative is kids sacrificing for you. And that's an injustice.
Yeah. Now, you have your own personal story with your mom as well. Like, can you unpack that as well for our viewers who may not know about that?
Yeah. And, a lot of people will say, oh, well, this is some kind of crusade against my own broken childhood, or, yeah, woman with two moms campaigns, for traditional marriage. I didn't get into this because I was talking about my backstory. The main reason I started talking about my mom was simply to say, my mom is in a same-sex relationship, and that does not impact her ability to mother. It's actually not her sexual orientation that determines whether or not she's a good parent. It's the fact that she's mine. She's my mother. I needed her. I needed her in terms of my identity formation, my understanding as a woman, the connection to my lineage, the way that she distinctly parented me in ways that my father did not. The fact that she's in a relationship with another woman doesn't change any of those things. But what that taught me was that you can and should love the people in your life who identify as gay or lesbian and never give 1 inch on the fact that children deserve their mother and father. And unfortunately, on the topic of marriage, especially, we have been conditioned to say this is the only way to love your gay family and friends. In fact, if you don't support gay marriage, you can't love your gay family and friends. And I'm like, you're just lying. You're just emotionally manipulating a lot of good people who actually do love their gay family and friends and probably do it better than a lot of people in their own community do. And you can do that while saying children need, deserve, and have a right to their own mother and father.
Yeah, and I'm sure. And you often connect debates around abortion with wider questions around family and parenthood. How do you see those issues relating to each other?
Well, especially when you want to look at abortion and reproductive technologies, these are two sides of the same child commodifying coin. Both of them subject children to the desires of adults. Both of them say your rights are conditioned on what I want. So in the world of abortion, the adults say if a child is unwanted, I can violate their right to life and force them out of existence. And in the world of reproductive technologies, adults say, well, if a child is very wanted, I can violate maybe many child's right to life and maybe some children's right to their mother and father and force them into existence. So both of them treat children as objects to be manipulated, discarded, or acquired, not because it's in the best interest of the child, because it serves adult identity and adult desire. So we really that's why I'm like, I'll be unpopular with every single person in your audience here because there's no adult group that is not victimizing children in some way. Why? Because children are the easiest demographic to victimize. They don't lobby, they don't vote, they don't do interviews, with platforms that are across the pond. They have no way of protecting their own rights. And that is why single, married, gay, straight, fertile, and infertile are all violating them because they can't fight back.
I think some people, in our audience or in the UK in general, might think, oh, it's an act of kindness to go down the IVF route. What would you say to that?
IVF destroys more embryonic life every year than abortion. Only about 2 to 3% of lab-made babies are going to be born alive. The vast majority are going to be sex selected out of existence, graded out of existence, eugenically screened out of existence. The ones that are not discarded or destroyed or donated to research will probably be stored forever in a freezer. So, unfortunately, if you believe that children have a right to life from the moment of fertilization, which they do, because that's the biologically verified understanding of when life begins, then you have to recognize that IVF, the way that it is currently encouraged to be practiced, is one that destroys more little lives than any other industry that's known. So it's the kind of thing where it's compassionate if you see the adults as victims. But if children have a right to life and a right to their mother and father, it's not compassionate for the children that die in the process or lose one or both of their biological parents so that adults can have what they want.
Yeah, there are a loss here. Now, on top of the IVF, there's also surrogacy issue. And here in the UK, sure maybe some of our viewers might not be aware of this, but there's actually a real rise in couples in their 70s and 80s using surrogacy. How should we think about that, particularly from the perspective of a child?
Children have a right to life and a right to their mother and father. And if you actually bring it always back to the fundamental rights of children, you get the right answers to every question. You get the right answer to what is the nature of marriage? Well, marriage is the only relationship that unites the two people to whom children have a natural right. You get the right answer to divorce. Well, a divorce should be avoided whenever possible unless one adult is at fault of breaking their vows, adultery, addiction, abuse, abandonment. Other than that, children have a right to their mother and father, and the adults need to work it out rather than foisting the burden on children. How do we look at things like surrogacy? Well, children have a right to their mother and father. Children always lose their birth mother through surrogacy. And now what we know is that once we have commercially severed that bond between mother and baby through commercial processes, it's a free-for-all. You've got billionaires mass producing children in China. You've got pensioners in the UK that are acquiring children. Sometimes they're making them with their own gametes. Sometimes they're just getting a surplus embryo because it's a little bit cheaper to purchase somebody's leftover baby than make one yourself. And what are these 70 and 80-year-olds doing? In essence, they're raising their own in-home caregivers. That's what they're doing. Obviously, you've got situations of single, double, or triple men that are acquiring children that nature and adoption would never give them. I mean, there was a terrible, famous case in the UK just recently of the little boy. Actually, I think that was adoption, adopted by two gay men, and they sexually abused him to death. They killed him through sexual abuse. Yes. Yeah, that's right. So it's like we can't play around with family structure. It's actually a matter of life and death for kids a lot of the time. And when we see children as objects to be manufactured through big fertility, of course you're going to get these horrific cases of people that are mass producing children, acquiring them for the purpose of exploitation, or old people saying, hey, this is a lot cheaper than hiring a full-time nurse.
And I think for some people, these might be uncomfortable conversations, but they need to be they need to be spoken about. And you
Yeah,
touched
who's going to
on,
be uncomfortable? It's
yeah,
not a question of can everybody be comfortable. It is, are we going to allow children to not just be uncomfortable, but severely at risk? Or will some of us have to be a little uncomfortable thinking about, oh, if I say this out loud, maybe a friend will get mad. Choose your hard. Either you're going to do the hard thing or children are going to suffer. I think we should do the hard thing.
that's the bottom line, I think. And furthermore, to the misery that's been discussed here is that with these babies that are being crushed, is that now we have designer babies, and people might think that's like science fiction, what I'm talking about. But actually, what is actually happening today is that you can choose certain aspects of the children in these embryos. So, what ethical questions does that raise? If you want to unpack that for our viewers.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't listen to everything he does, but Tucker Carlson just had a long interview with one of the founders of the major genome screening, genome mapping companies that will allow you to mass produce embryos and then not just screen them for things like Down syndrome or whether they're male or female. They will do a total genome scan and you'll know everything you can about this child. You can know whether or not they are at risk of certain cancers or heart disease or early blindness or early baldness. And of course, you're going to know their characteristics, their eye color, their height. We're getting close to figuring out how to measure IQ. And so it's like, let me be clear, you're not designing a child a boy that's 6'2" with a certain color of blue eyes that is free of cystic fibrosis. That's not what you're doing. You're mass producing embryos, 25. You're screening out all of the children that are not male or 6'2" or potentially 6'2" who have the possibility of cystic fibrosis. So it's not like you are designing children. You're mass producing babies and eliminating the unwanted children. If there is a modern version of eugenics, this is it. This is it. So there is the possibility in the future of designing children and adjusting their genes. That is still widely frowned upon in the world of bioethics. But this mass production of children and screening out the undesirables is now getting more abundant and cheaper and more widely employed.
Or what do you think people misunderstand about you and about your perspective on these issues?
If they listen to me, it's pretty clear that I don't think that children should be sacrificed so adults can live as they please. But if you just want to Google me, then I'm a hateful, homophobic bigot that is against, anything that an adult wants. And that's fine. If bigotry means that you are going to be unflinching and unbending, then fine. You can call me whatever you want. But children need somebody to put up some guardrails and advocate on their behalf because they can't do it on their own.
And you've done a lot of research. You've loads of facts and stats to back this up, and people can find that on your website as well, I'm sure. And what has been one of the things that has been challenging, most challenging for you, or professionally, or in your family, doing this work?
The fact that they come after your family, like they won't just engage in terms of arguments, which it's fine. You can call me whatever names you want. You can challenge me on on X or whatever. But it's like, no, we're going to try to find your mother. No, we're going to figure out where your kids go to school. We're going to punish your church. People that have no idea that I run a nonprofit or was writing a blog. No, we're going to make them pay for what you're doing. They don't, honestly, especially, I will say, especially the gay and like loving and tolerant crowd are the most vicious, the most willing to hurt innocent people to advance their civil rights claim. So it's the reason why I started blogging anonymously to begin with, because I know that they don't fight fair. And it's not just that they fight dirty, they fight vicious. And so obviously it's a deterrent. They want it to be a deterrent for other people to speak up and get into this um, culture war. And it is a war. It is a war of ideas, and it is a war over culture. And culture matters because people matter and people are in culture. And so they know that if they really go after you, doxing you, finding your children, sharing screenshots of, personal information, not just of you, but of the people that you know. Obviously, most people are not going to be able to or want to stand up to that kind of vicious, personal, and not personal, but like the people that you love opposition. Um, and it's been a very effective tool, I think, to sideline advocates who want to defend the good, true, and beautiful as it relates to marriage and family.
That's very difficult for you. Yeah, I'm sorry that's happening. But you're doing like great work. And what would you say then to people who feel pressure or feel like they're falling behind when it comes to marriage and family and children?
This is a huge crisis. I mean, I think that all of us watch the total fertility rate fall year after year after year in our countries. Like the United States just came out with the most recent numbers, and we're down to 1.57 babies per woman. It is a crisis. It is the biggest crisis that most people are not talking about. So it is a problem. The way that I see it is we have a fertility crisis because we have a marriage crisis. Most people that get married end up having children. The problem is fewer people are getting married, and the ones that do get married are marrying later. And so even if they want 3 children or 4 children, if you get married at the age of 32, you usually only get 1 or 2 kids. And then we've got a marriage crisis because we have a dating crisis.
Yeah,
It
I
is
would push
very,
back
very
that.
hard,
Yeah,
yeah, for young people
it
to
is. Yeah.
find
Yeah.
like-minded people and have opportunities to hang out in real life in ways where they can simply observe, study, enjoy, to even find out, hey, should I ask this person on a date? So we've got some sort of civilization level crises that previous generations and cultures throughout the world have never had to deal with before, ever. And it's all comes down to we're starving the next generation really of critical aspects of human development, especially as it relates to just social contact, so that they can even make those relationships and have the confidence to just have in-person conversations with somebody of the opposite sex. So it's a 5 alarm fire. And those of us that are over the age of 40 and 50, I would say, who got to enjoy friendship, dating, courtship, and marriage before the internet age, need to step into the gap and do a lot of healthy, joyous, targeted encouragement for and facilitation of young people who would like to get married and have children, but the world is not creating opportunities for them to even form those relationships.
Indeed. Now, when you look at culture right now, is there any part of it that gives you hope for the future, especially when it comes to the next generation?
Well, when you do look at who's having babies, it does tend to be the conservative and the religious. About 4 to 1. There was a chart that came out just this last week of looking at conservative men had like 2.3 children per man, and liberal men had zero point 0.5. And so it does look like if you communicate the proper ideas, and what are the proper ideas? What is conservatism? Conservatism is just an acknowledgement of reality. Conservative philosophy is just something that is more closely tethered to the economic, biological, historical, and behavioral realities as it relates to humanity. That's what conservatism is. Why is it that you see spiking rates of anxiety and mental health disorders in progressive children, children who are raised by progressive parents? Well, it's not just because conservative parents tend to be more authoritative. It's because conservative parents are communicating to their children a worldview that actually is more aligned with natural reality. And so what's encouraging is it looks like when you can inculcate the right ideas being conservative ideas that align with the world as it actually is, those people tend to get married and have children. Fantastic. So that tells us that we're actually in an ideology, an idea war, and we can make a great case. Like, if you're in an ideological war, that means you need to share your ideas better. You need to communicate the truth more sharply. Some of that is arguments. Some of it is just revealing it. Sometimes some of it is displaying your life so other people can see it. Some of it is, I love being married, and my husband and I are really, really different, but he is so faithful to me, and he fills in the areas where I struggle, and I fill in the areas where he struggles. And you know what? We've got 4 kids between the ages of 16 and 22, and they're the best part of our life. Some of it is just talking about how wonderful marriage and children are so that people can behold something that they want to become. So there's a lot of major challenges out there, civilization level challenges. But because it's mostly a battle of ideas, that is something that we have an opportunity to change by sharing and displaying better ideas for the next generation.
Yeah, we can show them a better way in a sense. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much, Katie, for your time and for your insight. I really value it. And
Yeah.
hopefully we'll see
Yeah.
you soon.
Great to talk with you, Catherine.